I wanted to bring today's episode to the podcast talking about weight loss. Obviously, if you're struggling to lose weight, this can be easier said than done. You've typically, tried all the diets, looked at all the exercise programs, tried things, and it may have succeeded for a while, but maybe it just hasn't been able to sustain it. Or maybe at this stage on the fertility journey, you just feel stressed by the whole journey itself. And then adding being able to lose weight is it's overwhelming. You're not sure where to start. So I wanted to bring this episode so you can figure out some easy tips and strategies to help you figure out what to do right now to help lose weight. And this is for you and your partner. I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 4 spots available per month to work with us. I would like to invite you and your partner to a Supercharged Your Fertility Discovery Call. And this call is for you if you meet at least one of these criteria. You've been trying to get pregnant for at least 2 years. You've been through at least one failed IUI or IVF. This calls for action takers. If you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. If you're seriously considering working with us, go to FabFertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. That's FabFertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. There's a lot of information about which supplements are right for fertility. And like most couples I speak with, you are probably taking a lot of supplements. But are these supplements optimizing or harming your fertility? That's why we recommend professional grade supplements without harmful dyes, fillers, or top allergens so that you can prepare your body in the best way for pregnancy. And as you may know, we take a functional approach to fertility. And while supplements are included in your customized protocols, which are based on testing, they are only part of the equation because there's no pill you can take that will out-supplement the basics, such as poor diet, dysregulated sleep, either moving too much or not enough, and not dealing with chronic stress. So we do recommend basic supplements for both men and women. And these are essential starters that you need to have right now to optimize your preconception health. And I'm excited to offer you a special discount at our Fab Fertile store. You'll receive 15% discount on our professional grade supplements. So simply go to Fab Fertile Store. That's F-A-B fertilestore.com to access the basic supplements so that you can prepare your body for pregnancy success without wasting time and money on supplements that may not be right for you. Go to Fab Fertile Store. That's fabfertilestore.com and save 15% on your order. Hey there. Thanks so much for listening to the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast. And I've got a favor to ask you. If you are enjoying learning about the functional approach to fertility, consider going to iTunes and rating and reviewing the podcast. This is how it helps the show reach more people that are struggling with infertility, knowing that there's another approach that really can get to the bottom of why it's not working in the first place. So all you need to do is, if you're on the app or the desktop, just go in and consider leaving a 5-star rating and leave a review. And there is step-by-step instructions in the show notes showing you exactly how to do that. So if you can just take a few minutes, just take the few minutes right now. You can pause this recording, come back, leave the review. It would really mean the world to me and help others that are on the fertility journey as well. Take care. I didn't need to go to donor eggs. Obviously, I don't regret it. I have beautiful children. I could have done things differently, restored. I was still cycling back in my 20s. I could have looked at my health, the environmental toxins, the stress I was under.
Many women are being told their eggs are too old. That's often merely an assumption that's not based on actual evidence. The reason being that there's no direct test of egg quality. You can't test egg quality.
It's the man who's got a food sensitivity or he has a zinc deficiency.
Like, there can be a root cause to these symptoms that are, quote unquote, period problems, that the doctor will pass you a pill without any question of why.
And some part of you knows that if you can reframe your journey from not want to struggle, or if it is struggle, learn how to embrace the struggle. Learn how to embrace it.
Most conditions in the child occur during the 9 months of development. It's the genetic switches are turned on or turned off, and they're pre-programmed. So you are in such a powerful, amazing position to do amazing things for your kids.
Why is IVF the first step? Because we believe it should be the last step. Welcome to Get Pregnant Naturally, where functional medicine and natural fertility solutions will help you get pregnant and have your baby. Hey there, I'm Sarah Clark, founder of Fab Fertile and your host. I believe the functional approach is the first step for anyone struggling with infertility, and my aim is to help you get pregnant naturally. Today, I'm welcoming Stu Schaefer to the podcast, and we're digging into how to finally lose the weight for good so that you can get pregnant naturally. Stu Schaefer is a 20-year award-winning weight loss coach. He specializes in helping people reset their body so they can lose weight like they did in their 20s. Stu struggled with anorexia in his teens, and when he overcame his eating disorder, he realized he wanted to help people create their perfect body in a healthy, sustainable way. Since then, Stu has helped thousands of people transform their body and empower themselves to create massive success in their life. Thanks so much for listening. I'm so thankful you're here. Make sure you hit subscribe, and if you know someone else who is on the fertility journey, please share this podcast with them. Hey, Stu, excited to have you on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. I am super excited to be here. I can't wait to figure out and see what all unfolds today.
Awesome. Exactly. So if you could share with us how you came to do this work. I know you have your own quite a personal story there of how you came into this field.
Oh, well, great question. Yeah. So, I help people lose weight, usually women in their 40s and 50s, and I do it in a weird way. It's a unique way, not weird, unique. And that is really getting the body into something called a thermogenic state, which is really another way of saying that the body burns fat and it maintains its lean body mass. And the reason that's so important is you're really optimizing the body, and you're doing that through nutrition and weights and cardio. And, a lot of women, and with a lot of diets today, they actually wreck their body. And so putting it into that thermogenic state, it optimizes it. Now, you asked how I got into this, and, it's a weird story. I actually, when I was 13, I was anorexic. I suffered from anorexia, and I suffered for about a year and a half or 2 years. And it was when I was transitioning from middle school or junior high, 8th grade, into high school in 9th grade. There were days when I would literally eat an apple all day long. That was it, one apple. And I remember I weighed 100 pounds. I was 5'10", and I thought I was fat. I had this negative self-image. I hated myself. I had gone to jail from breaking and entering into a house. And this was kind of my, I guess, a self-abuse kind of thing, because I felt so guilty and shame around that. And I remember getting a program in 1999, and I decided I would follow this program. And it was so hard, Sarah, because I had anxiety all day long, every single day, because every time I ate, I thought I'm going to get fat. This is too much food. This is going to be terrible. And I was eating 5 or 6 meals a day, and I was all day long, anxiety for a whole month. Finally, I guess I proved to myself, like, I was eating this and I didn't gain weight, and it was a slow recovery. But I remember very vividly in the hallway of my high school that I had decided to become a trainer and a fitness coach, because I knew the amount of transformation that I had experienced and how that shifted my entire life. It pulled me out of the anorexia, and it caused me to create confidence and focus and the vision for my life. I mean, it's unbelievable. And it was so special that I thought, I understand what people are going through when they don't like their body. I understand what people are going through when they have anxiety, when they're not sure where to turn, because they're trying to find information, but there's so many sources. There's products, there's infomercials, there's this diet and that diet, and it's so overwhelming. I mean, there were days where I wanted to just literally curl up in a ball. And I realized, man, when someone can transform their body, they literally empower themselves to transform their life and create a life worth living. And that is my mission in life, is to help as many people do that as possible.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting with anorexia. It's like you typically, I wonder what the stats are on this. Maybe with men versus women, because you just sort of think you see women more with anorexia than men talking about it.
That's a good question. Now it's actually close to 50-50.
Oh, wow. Okay. And so with this, with weight, anything around weight, obviously, and then fertility, there's stats, talking about that a higher BMI can negatively impact IVF. Also, higher BMIs can impact miscarriage rates. And then also, this is a stat actually from the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists saying babies born to obese women with a BMI of 30 or greater have an increased risk of birth defects such as heart defects and neural tubing. Some of that stuff is just, it's like shocking. Obviously and it's also with men too, with weight loss, not just women here. It's associated with lower testosterone and impaired sperm quality.
Yeah.
Or a higher rate of erectile dysfunction. So obviously from a fertility standpoint, the looking at weight, and I think anyone that's trying to lose weight, if we could lose weight, we would, right? It's easier said than done. As you talked about the body shame piece too, where, people that if they are choosing, assisted reproductive technology and they're being told, oh, sorry, you can't do that because you're overweight. Like that's a whole other kind of thing too, right? Where it sends people into a tailspin with potential body shame and then not being allowed to have these treatments because of their size.
Yeah, you just mentioned like 7 or 8 different levels. And let me unpack this really easily. I'm going to simplify, and I want to share a story about a client I had named Steph. And this is really interesting. I think this will kind of make sense how this all comes together. Steph was one of my clients, and she actually came to me initially because, and this was about 2009, because she wanted to get pregnant and her doctor recommended that she lose weight. She wasn't trying to do any sort of treatment to get pregnant or assistance. But the doctor said, look, if you lose weight, you're going to have a much smoother pregnancy, a much healthier pregnancy. You're going to feel better. The baby's going to be better. Your likelihood of getting pregnant is going to go up. There's a list of things. And so she said, and her doctor told her, but I don't want you to diet because that can actually work against you. So when Steph came to me, she said, I don't know what my doctor's talking about. And what I explained was this thing where when you restrict calories or you cut out food groups or you do a super high macronutrient ratios, which are in a lot of the current fad diets, you can really throw your body out of whack. You can affect your blood sugar. You can affect your thyroid levels. You can affect your hormone levels. And obviously, all this plays a role in fertility. It plays a role throughout the entire pregnancy and development. And it plays a role in after the pregnancy and what your body looks like and how it handles everything and snaps back. So Steph comes to me and says, can we do this? I said, yes. So 12 weeks we work. She ends up losing in 8 weeks. She went from, I can't remember the starting body fat. It was somewhere up close to 30. So she was clinically considered obese. Although if you saw her, you wouldn't think she was obese. And she went down to 19% body fat. And that for a woman is in the very healthy zone. So she ended up losing, I think 23 pounds in 8 weeks. And then she got pregnant and it was awesome. And but the best part is, and this is what I want to echo here, is when we worked together, she learned how to eat right. So she learned how to eat and she lost body fat. And then throughout the entire pregnancy, she understood how to eat in a way so that her baby could develop perfectly. And she felt great. And she had the energy and the stamina. And then after the pregnancy, she came back and she was able to lose the weight, her baby weight, her pregnancy weight, much faster and in a very healthy way. She then went off on her own, but it was several years later she came back because she was ready to have another baby, and it worked so well the first time she wanted to do it the second time.
Nice. Well, yeah, what a great story. It's really being able to say, get your body you said in a very short period of time. We noticed that too with having people change their diet. Some of these inflammatory foods, that the weight just like they're eating like heaps of foods, but the weight just comes off because you're not sometimes if we're stuck eating processed foods or foods that don't agree with us. And just back on something with the calorie restriction too. I've done a couple podcast episodes on amenorrhea there, talking about under fueling and over exercising and then women losing their periods. Yeah. With the restrictive calories there, like what are you saying?
That's absolutely true. And then there's a third level here. And again, this can affect some women and their fertility more than others, but it is a variable, and that's the stress factor. So when you undernourish, you cut too many calories and you exercise, which also pulls you into an even further calorie deficit, it actually counteracts a lot of things. First of all, it can prevent you from losing weight because the body goes into lockdown. The second thing is it can overstress your body. It can overstress your adrenals. Again, I've had clients. I had one woman who she just stopped losing weight. She just stopped. And I said, what the heck did you just change? And she said, nothing. But when we looked at it, she had started doing all these aerobics classes and she was doing cardio and aerobics for an hour and a half almost every single day. And when you overstress the body, Sarah, I mean, you can tell me if I'm right here, but I've seen so many women who couldn't get pregnant because they were so stressed. They were stressed about getting pregnant. They were stressed about their body. They were trying to do everything perfect, and their body literally went into this lockdown mode, and it prevented weight loss. It prevented pregnancy. And as soon as I remember one of my friends telling me him and his wife were trying to get pregnant, and he said, one of our friends said to put in for adoption. And I told my wife, and she's like, no way. And I said, why are you telling us to do this? And he said, well, once you do it, you kind of like chill out about getting pregnant. And as soon as you kind of relax a little bit, usually you get pregnant. And that's actually what happened. And so you have to understand is the exercise is still a stress. Restricting calories stresses the body. And so it's actually the opposite that needs to be done. You need to eat more. You need to work out less. But when you do it correctly, you can put your body in the right state. It's the state I mentioned earlier. It's called the thermogenic state. And your body will still burn fat, but it'll be healthy. Your blood sugar will regulate. Your hormone levels will regulate. Your thyroid levels will regulate. And your body won't be under too much stress, and it can actually do what it's designed to do, both on the weight side and the fat burning side and also on the fertility side.
Yeah, we see that a lot with people doing, so much cardio, like vigorous exercise. And because it's like a type A person, go.
Yeah.
And then like for fertility to kind of pull it back, and even pulling it back is like, well, that's how I cope. And what am I going to do without that? And it's really quite hard for people. And then, it's like too much cardio. And sort of sometimes people are working at maybe at a 10, where fertility is more like at a exercise of more around a 4 or 6, not as
exactly
pounding it out.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's interesting, that whole adoption thing. I know it is one of those ones where like, relax. Obviously, if you're on the fertility journey, when you're on the fertility journey, someone's like, oh, but the adoption thing, and be like, oh my God, because people say that all the time, and you just slap the person. But there is something in there about, like
if you're stressing, you're so stressed about it and you're obsessing about it, it actually works against you. And that goes for anything, whether you're trying to lose weight or get healthy or have a child. It's like, you've got to learn that healthy balance, Sarah, with how do you treat the body and nourish it, and then also still know what you want and do it and not stress about it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So let's talk about the exercise component too. What your recommendations are and what you're seeing there as far as helping.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. So there was an interesting study done that I came across. It was done in the late 90s, and it was a 100-day study with about 54,000 participants. So this was like one of the biggest studies I think that's ever been done. And they were looking at what is the optimum training for weight loss, and you have to understand is in the late 90s, we were really making huge leaps and bounds and advances into exercise, and it was coming on more people's radars and stuff. So they wanted to see, do you have to work out hours a day, minutes a day, every other day? What's the optimal? And here's what they found. It's very interesting. They found that for aesthetics, for weight loss, and really optimizing the body in when I say optimizing the body, because I'm saying that a lot, I mean that the body is functioning at its highest level. It's your metabolism is good, your hormones, thyroid, blood sugar, everything's balanced, good, and you're literally at the peak functioning level of your body, meaning you feel amazing, no brain fog, everything's in line. What they found was that the sweet spot for exercise was 3 days a week of weight training and 3 days a week of cardiovascular exercise. And it was for about 30 minutes. They found that any more weight training than 3 days a week didn't yield any additional results or benefits. But anything less than 3 days a week of the weight training, you could see noticeable drop-offs in results. Then they looked at the cardio, and they saw that the cardio done on the other 3 days a week was was all that was necessary to create a very dramatic transformation. And when I say a dramatic transformation, I'm talking about losing, somewhere between 30 and 50 pounds of body fat, not just weight, body fat over a 12-week to 16-week period, about 100 days, without putting the body into a catabolic state. Mm-hmm. And the catabolic state is crucial. It's crucial for what we're talking about, because that's when the body starts getting a little overstressed and starts doing its lockdown reaction. And that's exactly what you want to avoid.
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. Yeah, it's a three times a week with the weight training and 3 times a week with the cardio. And then, what's the cardio tolerant? Like, what do they find, and what do you find then for the amount of cardio?
Yeah. So over the 20 years I've been doing this, I've looked at different modes. Mm-hmm. Is there high intensity the best? Is steady state low intensity the best? Like, what really yields the best results? And I will tell you that the best cardio, well, technically, this is kind of a trick question. The best cardio is the whatever you're going to do. All right. Some people, if you told them that the best was running, but they would never do it because they hate running, well, then that's not the best for them. Right. However, walking has always yielded the best results in my clients if they go for walks. And the client I referenced earlier, the gal who all of a sudden had stopped losing weight because she had started doing these 1.5 hour aerobics classes. I even asked her, I said, hey, when was the last time you really remember losing more weight? And she's like, I said, what were you doing? She goes, well, I was going on walks with my husband through the neighborhood. So, well, I want you to do that again. She goes, how is that possible? How would that help? I would be burning less calories. I would be working out less intense. That would cause me to gain weight. And I said, just try it. Trust the process. And after the first week of doing that, her body let go of about 2 or 3 pounds because she took enough stress off of it, but it was the right cardio to still burn fat and to still be active without overstressing the body. And this is even more important when it comes to fertility and getting pregnant.
And it's not, as I say to people, it's not out there you walking in your flip-flops. Like, you still need to put on some running shoes.
Yeah, that's good. So Sarah, that's a great point. And thank you for making that distinction. Everything I do is based on a person's heart rate, and the heart rate's based on your age, your gender, your resting heart rate, any medications you're on, things like that. But the beauty of that is you don't outgrow the heart rate, because as you get in better shape, you're going to work harder to get to the same heart rate. So it grows with you. But yeah, it's a brisk walk. You should be breathing fairly heavy, but you don't need to run. You don't need to do interval training. You don't need to do anything crazy like that.
And what about the weight side of things? What are you seeing there for the amount of weight, the reps? Like, is there a sweet spot?
That's interesting. You know what? No one has ever asked me that question, surprisingly. But Sarah, I love that you are very analytical. This is awesome. So yes, that's a good question. To fill that 30-minute time, typically what a workout would consist of is training 3 separate body parts. And so that's why you're breaking it into 3 different workouts, so that over the whole week, over the 3 separate workouts, you end up training your entire body. But you don't train the entire body each time. Instead, you break it up into about 3 different body parts for each workout. And you only need to do between 6 and 8 sets per body part. Okay, now this was really interesting at the time, because at the time, all the bodybuilders, all the people who had been lifting weights, they were all convinced that you had to do 20, 25, maybe even in some cases 30 sets per body part. Yeah. And what we found is that the 6 to 8 can yield the same exact results, but at 1/5 the amount of time and effort.
And what about the weight, the amount? Because I'm always like, ooh, I'll do a 5 pound. 12 pounds is too much. So how do you know where you're like, okay, there's a point of like pushing yourself, and the point where you're like, okay, well, that's not doing anything.
Yeah, that's also a very good question. So the way I do it is I have a very special blend of some lightweight sets and some harder sets. Now, let me just explain this, because especially for women, a lot of women who are listening are like, well, I don't want to train with weights because I don't want to get bulky. And is it going to hurt my joints? Is it going to hurt me? And the answer is no, it's not going to hurt you, and it's not going to make you bulky. And then some women will say, well, geez, it's scary to lift heavy. And I agree. It's not about the weight. It's actually about the difficulty. Let me give you an example because I know this is a little bit weird. All right. So I had a client one time came to me. Her name was Emily. All right. And she'd never worked out before in her life. Now she ended up losing 20 pounds in about 4 or 5 weeks. I don't usually talk about this because some people are like, oh, well, that's how much weight she did. No, Emily was unique because she had never worked out. And when she did, her body just was like, oh, this is awesome. But she had the same concerns here. She's like, well, I don't know how to lift weights. Am I going to hurt myself? I don't want to lift heavy. And I said, don't worry. You don't have to lift heavy. Now, Emily, since she was so new, for her, let's take a bicep curl because I think most people know what that exercise is. For a bicep curl, Emily could maybe do 8 pounds. 8 pounds, and maybe she could only get 8 reps with 8 pounds because she'd never worked out before. That was heavy for her. Now, that's not a heavy weight, but it was hard for her. So we might do a set with 2 pounds, then a set with, 3 pounds, a set with 5 pounds, and work our way up to 8. And then she had that perceived intensity, that really hard set. Now, over time, as she continued working out, the 8 pounds eventually moved up to 15 pounds. But again, it wasn't the weight that was important. It was how difficult it was for Emily to actually do. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if you're listening and you're like, well, geez, how do I do this? Or Sarah, you're asking, well, should I do 5? Should I do 12? One kind of seems like it's too much. One is definitely too light. You want to blend, but you want at least one of those sets towards the end to be hard enough that, let's say you're doing 8 reps or maybe 10 reps, hard enough that you can't get any more reps. You're like, oh, that was 10. It's burning. I can't do another one. It's just too hard. That was it. That's all I had was 10 reps. And then you're like, okay, well, if that's 12 pounds, that's 12 pounds. And you're still lifting slowly. You're not throwing the weight. You're not cheating. You're not swinging your body. And if you do it that way, your body will determine what weight you should use. And you'll never be able to lift too much weight, too heavy of weight, because if you're lifting slowly and strictly, you won't be able to.
Yeah, and a lot of times I think people will power through. There's either the power through thing or like myself, we're like, ooh, that seems too heavy. I'll just
a little bit cautious.
5 pounds. That's, and then meanwhile, I'm like, oh, I can actually do 12. It's okay.
Yeah.
So that's helpful. So you mentioned a number of times blood sugar, and this is something that we see in themes with both men and women, blood sugar imbalance, as well as, on the fertility journey. So can you talk about blood sugar and balancing that? And why that matters for weight management?
Absolutely. Well, not just weight management. It's for even the fertility piece, like we're talking about, and other functions in the body, and even for anti-aging. So, I got to tell you, I'm not huge on any of the modern diets right now. I've been doing this for a long time. I've seen a lot of diets, and we're in a very interesting fad phase. We're in a high fat fad. Like we went through the low fat, we went through the low carb, we went through the gluten free, the high protein, and now we're in the high fat, which is really interesting to me. But because high fat diets, I actually just pulled a study, which is interesting, can actually cause you to create something called diet induced hypothyroidism. And a lot of women that are coming to see me now have hypothyroidism, and it's diet induced. So it's really interesting. But let's go back to the blood sugar because this all relates. A lot of people think, and actually I've had clients who've come to me with diabetes, and the only reason I reference this is because blood sugar and diabetes go hand in hand, where doctors have actually told them, hey, eat cheese because the cheese will help regulate your blood sugar. And that's so far off the mark. So let me talk about what will regulate blood sugar, why that's important for weight loss, and even for fertility. When you eat foods, primarily carbohydrates, sugar, obviously, candy, cookies, etc., but also things like fruit and even complex carbs like potatoes and rice, quinoa, and those types of things, beans. If you just have carbohydrates by themselves, it causes your blood sugar to go up. It spikes your blood sugar. And the reason that's so harmful to the body is because the body doesn't like that. The body wants your blood sugar to be a certain range, and it operates very well when it's at that range. So when it goes up, the body says, uh-oh, the blood sugar is going up. We need to get this back down. And so it causes your pancreas to release insulin. And the insulin then causes the body to release fatty acids into the bloodstream. And those fatty acids will bring the blood sugar back down. But here's the problem. Most of the time, you then end up converting those to triglycerides and storing them as fat. Okay. And so it's stressful on the body and it causes fat gain or weight gain. Now, there's ways to avoid this. And the best way to avoid this is not to cut carbs. Because if you get too few carbs, you can also cause diet-induced hypothyroidism. You can mess with your hormones. It's not good. It's not good. And so to function optimally, your body does need carbs, but you want to mix it with healthy proteins. And this is why proteins have gotten such a good reputation, but in some cases, then the focus becomes carbs bad, protein good. That's not the case. Carbs alone bad, carbs with protein good. And so the protein almost acts as a time release so that your body doesn't get the spike in blood sugar, doesn't have to pump out insulin, doesn't store the carbs as triglycerides and fatty acids. And, oh, by the way, carbs are known as something called protein sparing. And all that means is your body can actually utilize the carbs for energy and then take the protein that you eat and use that to repair and help your tissue, your organs, and everything else in the body the way that the protein and the amino acids are designed to be absorbed in the body. So that's why it's so powerful. Well, right now, most people are doing either super high protein and low carbs or super high fat and low carbs and moderate protein. And those diets are actually contributing to some additional health problems that especially in women with the thyroid issues that we're really not talking about and we're really not aware of.
Yeah, the thyroid piece is interesting because we see it all I don't know, 99% of the time, I'd say, with the couples we're working with, either it's hypothyroidism, subclinical thyroid issues, Hashimoto's, like something is going on with the thyroid. And so can you talk about that then as it regards to weight loss and weight?
Yeah. So you mentioned, now, I don't know, can I ask you a quick question, Sarah?
Mm-hmm.
Have you noticed an increase in women with thyroid issues lately?
Yeah, I think it's to me, in the conventional side of things, people are being told their thyroid is normal, like TSH is normal, not looking at the full panel, not looking at antibodies. Like for me, for years, oh, your thyroid's normal. Meanwhile, it was like 3.8 or 3.5. My hair was falling out. My skin was dry as a desert, like all the different classic symptoms, but being told everything is normal and not digging deeper. And I had these gut infections and food sensitivities. And so we see it, like I've seen it personally, then we see it like all the time that these healing opportunities have been missed. And especially when being told everything's fine, it's frustrating. So thank you for that. That's a good answer. My personal observation has been in the last 3 years, I've seen triple the number of women with thyroid issues as I did my previous 15 years training. And I started thinking, what is going on here? Something is going on. Is there something in the water or something in the food or whatever? Well, like I referenced earlier, there's 2 studies that were done, one in the 80s, one in the 90s, that proved clinically. And when I reference studies, they have to meet criteria. They have to be done over at least a 100-day period and with at least 1,000 participants. The ones that are done over like 2 or 3 weeks with like 20 or 30 participants, I don't really consider that a valid study because the sample size is too small. Anyway, what they found was that if you go with too low of carbs for too long, it will drastically lower your T3 levels and cause diet-induced hypothyroidism. Conversely, if your fat intake is too high for too long, it does the same thing. And right now, so many people are doing keto, which is super high fat and super low carb. So they're doing it from both sides. And I believe that's causing diet-induced hypothyroidism, and it's actually wrecking the body. When your thyroid slows down or becomes a hypothyroid, in essence, your body's not getting the T3 and T4 chemicals that it needs to really ramp up its metabolism and burn fat and absorb and digest the foods that you need to. Now, Hashimoto's is a little different animal, but still falls within that parameter. And so what happens is a lot of women in particular, they go, I want to lose weight. So they do the keto, then they lose weight initially, and they combine it with fasting. And then all of a sudden they go, well, I don't know why I can't lose weight anymore.
Well, they've just put their body into a catabolic state instead of a thermogenic state, and they've messed with their thyroid. It's out of whack now. They've kind of wrecked their body. And so then they get stuck in this spiral where then they either have to eat less and less and less, and they end up burning off muscle and their body fat goes up, or they kind of start to try to normalize and then they gain a bunch of weight back and they're even more frustrated. And that is why it's so important to know how to optimize the body and not to just do some sort of a diet. Some of these diets that we're doing were never meant to be done long term, but really they were maybe meant to be done a couple times a year. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's like those generalized recommendations. And although maybe the diet might have worked for someone, is it the right one for you? So it is we get, with all the fads and all the stuff going on, right? As you say, the low fat, the paleo, the gluten-free, the keto, but find that personalized diet for sure. Mm-hmm. And then, so with the weight loss, obviously there's an emotional component too, right? So can you talk a little bit around that and kind of what you're seeing with your clients?
Yeah, that's great. It actually reminds me of a client, and this client, her name is Jane, is Jane. I'm just not working with her anymore. So Jane and I were working together several years ago, and she had this, when you talk about the emotion and component, there's like a couple different levels, and Jane stands out to me because she was kind of struggling with each of the different levels. It was very fascinating. Jane would start seeing success and then would inevitably self-sabotage. And her self-sabotage looked like food cravings, binging, or doing something silly like going out with friends without eating. So she was starving and she would drink alcohol and then overeat all these bad foods, and she would undo her progress. And what I found out working with so many clients, especially on the emotional and mental level over the years, was that there's a few pitfalls, and Jane had most of these. The first pitfall is that there's an element of worthy, of if you believe that you're actually worthy of looking a certain way or losing weight. The second element is the food craving piece. And then the third element has to do with this level of comfort and or coachability. So let me just break down the three because they're very important for getting pregnant and going through this fertility journey, because they really have a lot to do with how a person handles challenges and how a person handles successes and just how they are overall. The first one is this idea about being worthy. And a lot of women in particular that I've worked with struggled with this because at some point or another in their life, something happened where they associated looking pretty with being dangerous, and because certain things happened with men when they were a certain weight, or they have been told time and time again by other people or by themselves that they're just fat, they're ugly, they're this and they're that. And they really don't believe that they can be beautiful or that they are beautiful or that they can even lose weight. And so that's usually one of the most powerful ones. I've had women who are like, well, geez, if I get down to this weight, when I've been there before, I got bad attention from men, weird things happened. And so they're literally afraid to lose the weight because they think that that's going to happen every time. Or the other one I mentioned is, they'll literally tell me that, well, I've always been the fat girl. I've always been the fat one. When I was in high school, I was the tag along, and they have this real negative belief about themselves. And that makes it almost impossible for them to see success. The second one that I mentioned, which is this food cravings, that usually has a lot to do with trying to mask or distract us from something going on that we don't want to think about. Let me give you an example with Jane. Jane had gone through a bad divorce years before I had met her, and it wasn't complete for her. There was things that she never completed with. She felt like it was unfinished, and she was still pretty emotionally sensitive to it. And so whenever she would start losing weight, or she would just be by herself, at her house or whatever, she would start thinking about it. She would start blaming herself, feeling awful, etc. And automatically she would go for something like chips and salsa or cookies or something. And that would distract her and keep her mind focused on something else, eating, rather than dealing with something from her past. Then after that, then she'd get all upset that she overate or cheated or whatever. And again, it was all part of this distraction. One of the things that she did was she wrote a letter to her ex-husband. She didn't send it. She wrote the letter to get everything out, and she ended up burning the letter, and her food cravings miraculously disappeared. It was quite phenomenal. And she was just like flabbergasted. And I just love it. I just love seeing the transformation. And then the last piece that I mentioned is coachability. Now, this is where someone may be looking for a program. They may come to you for a fertility program, or they may come to me for a weight loss program. And we may have a protocol that we know works. We've proven it. We understand how the body works. We understand how things come together. Well, we may show them what to do, explain, outline things. But if they're not coachable, or they insist on doing it their way, oftentimes then they won't get the results. And this is all part of the mentality. This is part of being able to change and do things differently to get different results that you're not able to get. You following with me? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so that's where I see it the most. Now, there's one other component which we've touched on in a roundabout way, and that's the attitude. How do you deal with challenges? Because sometimes things don't happen as quickly as we want, or they don't happen the way we think they should happen. And if you get discouraged and you focus on what you don't have, or you focus on the issue and you stress yourself out, versus focusing on what you do want and maintaining a positive attitude and maintaining an attitude that you can do it and that you do deserve this and it's going to happen, the results are drastically different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because self-sabotage and that sort of piece will, happens before you start something, like 2 weeks in where you're like, yeah, I got this. And then in the middle of it, when you're like, I really got it. And then boom, it takes you off course. So having those kind of pieces, like the worthiness is a huge one, right? To be able to see that. Huh. And then the craving piece, as you're saying.
It's funny. I was just thinking about a client I had. This guy was so funny, Sarah. He would every time he'd train with me, he'd somehow get injured somehow. And that's when you kind of know it's self-sabotage, is when every single time there's some fluke injury. At that point, something's going on. And what I found out was interesting. He was more afraid. This is really fascinating. He was more afraid to do the program perfectly and not get the result than he was about injuring himself. So he had a reason not to finish the program. Mm-hmm. Because if he had a reason not to finish the program, he never had to risk the fact that, geez, what if I do this perfectly and I don't get my goals or I don't get the results? Well, to him, that meant he was a failure. Yeah. And it was way worse for him to think he was a failure than it was to say, oh yeah, I would have done it, except I broke my toe or I sprained my wrist. There's always something, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. To see, that's why these programs are helpful, right? You would help you get out of your own way, because if you could do it by yourself, you already would have done it. So it's like to be able to dig into everyone has their own stuff. Like to me, I am a coach. And once I became a coach, I'm like, yeah, I never thought I needed coaches. I'm like, turns out that just makes things, it helps you get out of your own way, which that's how you see success.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything you're obsessed with right now? Be it a book, a website, an app, a documentary, anything you're like just digging and want to share with us?
I don't know that I'm obsessed with anything. One thing I will tell you is that, and I'm sure you tell this to your clients, and I'm finding how important this actually is. And that is this. When you have the right attitude, a lot of stuff in life will just be better. You'll feel better. You'll perform better. You'll lose weight faster. You'll get the results you want in your life faster. And so when I say having the right attitude, it's like being positive, but beyond that, like going through the day with a smile, focusing on what you're grateful for, focusing on what you want, not what you don't want and not what you don't have. Being awesome to your own body and being and loving your body for where it is now, even if you want to change it. Loving yourself for where you are now, even if you want to get pregnant and you're not. It's just start there so that that everything starts falling into place around you.
It's interesting when coaching couples, I see sometimes both of them are optimistic, but usually it's like one person is a pessimist, the other person is an optimist. And then it's like, it's an interesting thing. And then the gratitude piece can really help someone to be able to, the more you look for the good, guess what? More of it shows up. If you're like that glass half empty person going, oh, especially with a diagnosis with infertility, their hope could be lost and you could feeling in a really dark place. And then you're like, are you kidding me? Now I have to also lose weight to even, have this work. Any words of wisdom or thoughts on that if we're feeling kind of in that low spot?
Yes, absolutely. It's how you view it. So listen, these are opportunities. All right. They're not problems. And so, when I was the lowest of the low and anorexic and had gone to jail and stuff, that was such a blessing in my life because it literally caused me to transform my life. It caused me to stay on the straight and narrow. It caused me to want something better for myself. It caused me to want to show other people that I was an amazing person, not a criminal, not a thief. And so when these quote unquote problems or challenges are dropped into your life, it's actually an opportunity. You're going to find out who you are. It's going to give you a chance to grow. If everything's going great, most of the time, people never grow. They never seek out more information. They never try to improve any of their skills or their personal growth or development. Usually it's only when there's an issue do people start paying attention and taking inventory. And so it's just a wonderful opportunity. And if you view it as that and you embrace the process rather than resisting it or being resentful towards it, beautiful things will happen, not only in yourself, but then also in life around you.
I agree. Mindset shift.
Yeah.
And so you have got a free gift for the listeners, and they can go to, I'll have it in the show notes, but they can go to StuSchaefer.com/FabFertile. And what can they expect with that? So you have a weight loss quiz?
Oh man, I'm actually going to give them 3 of my best resources. The first is a free masterclass, a free video training on the biggest weight loss mistakes people make as far as exercise, nutrition, mindset, all that. And really a certain couple tweaks that everyone can make, simple tweaks that can allow them to start losing weight quickly and put their body into this thermogenic state. They'll also get my fat loss blueprint, which outlines everything I do and my clients do because it works so well. And they can then take the thermogenic quiz to see if, are you putting your body into that thermogenic state or the catabolic state? And if you're putting your body into the catabolic state and you can get it into the thermogenic state, it's going to be so much better for your body. And a lot of things can improve health-wise and change. And it can definitely help with weight loss and the fertility piece, like we mentioned.
Awesome. So they go to StuSchaefer.com/FabFertile. Any final thoughts here, Stu, on our topic today?
Just say that, there's a lot of myths and misconceptions about health and weight loss. And like I said, we're in a high fat fad phase and it can really wreak havoc with your body. And so really the best way to empower yourself is to get really good, clear information from good sources like you, Sarah. I would lump myself in there, although I don't like to brag, but people who have been doing this for a long time and understand how everything works. And then you don't have to worry about, are you doing the right thing? Then all you have to do is follow the right thing and the results will come.
Love it. Thanks so much, Stu.
Oh, thank you so much.
I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 4 spots available per month to work with us. I would like to invite you and your partner to a Supercharged Your Fertility Discovery Call. And this call is for you if you meet at least one of these criteria. You've been trying to get pregnant for at least 2 years. You've been through at least one failed IUI or IVF. This calls for action takers. If you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. If you're seriously considering working with us, go to FabFertile, F-A-B-Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. That's FabFertile, F-A-B-Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. You may be taking supplements that instead of optimizing your fertility, may be harming it. That's why we recommend professional grade supplements without harmful dyes, fillers, or top allergens. Simply go to FabFertile Store, that's FABFertileStore.com to receive a 15% discount on our basic supplement recommendations for preconception health. That's FabFertileStore.com. The Get Pregnant Naturally podcast, including show notes and links, provides information with respect to healthy living, nutrition, lab testing, and is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor is it to be construed as such. We cannot guarantee that the information provided on the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast reflects the most up-to-date medical research. Information is provided without representation or warranties of any kind. Please consult a qualified physician for medical advice and always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health and nutrition program.